So then, little by little, little threads of the the infrastructure start to come back in place. And I was there for 5.5 weeks or something like that, and it was a wake up call. As a matter of fact, when I went to Katrina and then came back here, I actually said to my wife, sometimes people can't see the forest for the trees.
I would say almost always.
When I came home from Katrina, that's just emotionally stripped when I came back. I mean, every day, like talk about shooting people. Sometimes I forget it was like 105 degrees every day. It was really hot, and so you drive up with a Red Cross car and but people's houses in some of those areas didn't sit right on the road, so you're wandering back saying, "Hello, is anybody here? Is there anything we can do for you?" You forget to take the vest with you, and you'd hear somebody's click, click. Hey, it's the Red Cross. Let me go back to my car and get my vest. But we opened up. I had the pleasure of opening up 4 of these big emergency things for them in the middle of supermarket parking lots or shopping center parking lots, where we just gave out thousands of dollars of worth of water and paper and juice, diapers, towels to clean up stuff. And then I also opened up 2 banking centers for the Red Cross, where we actually they came in and started writing checks to people. That was kind of interesting to watch, because you could tell some of these guys that they'd been going around to these things, and their system of tracking was kind of archaic. And I showed that we actually got the military to come in and set some Wi-Fi up for us so that we could do some better checking. But the whole thing was very strenuous for me emotionally. I mean, you'd get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning,
and you'd go until 10:30.
You'd go until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. You're living in a Navy Seabee base with 800 people in this big cement bunker that was 120 degrees, and they brought in these big, huge trucks to suck out the air and try and cool it off. And it was a little cooler after they brought those things in, but it was still 85, 90 degrees in these places. And you're in cots, 3 or 4 feet away. So it was very, very demanding. Very demanding.
Stinky.
Not so bad, though, actually. I met a couple of guys from Yellow Book. And these guys came in and volunteered right off the street to come and work for the Red Cross. And I put them to work because they knew the area, they knew all the places. So this guy was kind of like, second lieutenant to me. He worked for Yellow Books. Yellow Books had an apartment in this a condominium complex for salesmen that traveled in from other areas to come to meetings and stuff. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom apartment with a nice living room and a kitchen and a washer and dryer. And they said, "Well, you guys want to use this?" And I said, "No, I'd rather sleep in the Navy Seabee base with like 2,000 people." So we went over there, and sure enough, half of this complex was blown down, but the other half where this apartment is was completely intact and had electricity, had television. I think we could only get about 2 or 3 stations because there was no cable service.
And they weren't up.
And so, so I moved a guy that was my number 2, that was from Illinois. He moved in, and we were in this apartment for 3 weeks, and it was, compared to the way we ate over there, we ate over the CB base because they just were killing us with food. The same guys that ran that CB base used to go, they do forest fires. So you're on like, 2,500 or 3,500 calories a day because those guys are burning that stuff up. And so I will tell you that I gained weight while I was in Mississippi, even though the work was tough. But when I came home, I really had, my life changed in a couple of ways that I never even realized. And I said to my wife when I returned from Mississippi, if I could find a really interesting job in public service, I might take it and get out of this consulting stuff. I didn't really like consulting. It was paying the bills, but I wasn't really happy with it. And it was not too long after that, maybe a month or 2 after that, then things started to change here, and the board came and made the offer. So
that was a question that I had skipped because you kind of answered it, but this answer is even better. It's almost as though there's a lot of potential repercussions from one event.
Yep.
And so in your life, God sent this storm to take you out of private enterprise into what you're doing now, maybe.
There's
I mean,
no
that's
such-
one interpretation of it.
Yeah, there's no such thing as coincidence that I decided to shut down my business and go to Mississippi.
It's right after.
There's no such thing. God sent me there for a reason, and then He brought me back here for a reason. And I had believed when I walked away from that job, I was making a lot of money, and all I had to do was just play the game and keep my mouth shut. And I'd be retired now on the beach with a couple of homes. I lived in a very expensive home, made a lot of money. And interestingly enough, when I went to Mississippi, a company, a Fortune 10 company, sent a guy in a private plane into Gulfport to interview me for a job while I was on the ground working for the Red Cross. And the guy said to me, I've never seen this before in my life. We're hearing a disaster, and he was a guy, one of those guys, Red Cross. I've never seen anybody fly in here on a corporate jet to interview somebody working for the Red Cross for a job. So I said, well, just stuff happens. And the job didn't work out. And when
They
I came
didn't
back,
offer it, or you turned them down.
It was about the color of my skin and entering up at a very high level job to a company that had made a commitment to diversify its senior management team and then got cold feet at the last minute. It didn't work, and they hired somebody else. And 7 months later, that guy had been a golf partner with the guy who hired him, the hiring manager. And this guy bombed out, and both of them got bounced. Well, one got fired, and the other one got kind of pushed out.
They told him that they would accept his resignation.
Yeah. But his job is the job that they contacted me for 6 months later. And it was the same week that they offered me the job here. And in that very same week, I got a job offer from a company up in the Oakland area. Very big jobs.
And you said, no thanks, I'd rather earn nickels.
No, I said to my wife, I said, here's an opportunity for us to get back in the game. 2 nice jobs. Going to leave Southern California, but the other ones in Oakland, we could probably make that work. Not a bad place to live in the Bay Area.
Up in the hills of Oakland is very nice.
Yeah, it would have been a nice compromise for leaving San Diego. Not the same, but a nice compromise. And the other job was in the Midwest someplace, but it was a very, very senior job in a very, very large company. And my wife looked me in the face, and she's known that I've had a couple of pretty sizable jobs in logistics and supply chain, even in corporate jobs that weren't just supply chain. The job that I walked out of here, I was president of a whole operating division with pretty large staffs in Chicago and North Carolina. And an executive vice president of a corporate organization. She said to me, Herb, haven't you already done those jobs before? And I said, yep, I have. And she said, haven't you been asking God what to do with you for the last 5 years? And I said, yeah, I have. So she said, which one are you listening to now? And I said, I just want to know, I wanted to put everything on the table so you know what we're stepping away from. And that was the end of the conversation. And I contacted the board here, the board chair the next day and said, we need to sit down and talk about that. There's a couple of things that have to change from the way they are today, but let's sit down and have a dialogue. And they asked me at that point if I would come in and run the place on a temporary basis because I had a little space, and I said, I can probably give you 15, 20 hours a week, so at least there's a person here that looks like he's running the place, so you don't have a lack of leadership. Here I am. So, no such thing as coincidence.
What was the first service project you did in your life? I think you may have already answered that.
Not here, you mean in my life?
In your life, since you've been breathing.
I would have to say it was the church. There's projects in the church. My mother had us in church every week. We always did service projects at the church, and that became a way of life with me. when I was in the Boy Scouts, we did a lot of service projects. And my dad died when I was 14, and I was kind of working my way to Eagle. And when he died, it was really necessary for me to get a part-time job at school, and I worked a lot in high school. I gave up sports. I was a pretty good fast guy, and track team gave that up too. And I kind of vowed that when my kids were old enough, I wanted them in Scouts. I liked the culture there. I liked the work ethic, the Christian ideology, and then and what happened is when I got married and I had two boys, they went to Cub Scouts, and I was their Cub leader, and then I was the Cub master. And then they moved up to Boy Scouts, and I was still the Cub master, but I also became the Boy Scout leader, and then the Boy Scout master, the Scout master. So I got a lot of jobs, and my oldest son has now got a 4-year-old, and he's going to be getting back into Scouts, but he sits on the board of the council back in New England that I was president of 20 years ago, and I'm still in Scouts, and this is, I think, my 43rd year in Boy Scouts. I'm here. I'm on the executive committee. I'm an officer, and I've done it in most of the years I was here in San Diego, except for the first 2 years when I was traveling a lot. So I probably have been on the board here for almost 10 years.
How can we, as a society, end homelessness?
Well, one of the things that when I have a pulpit to preach this is that the United States government is not going to solve homelessness. The state of California is not going to solve homelessness. My analogy that I started to talk about was with all of the faith-based organizations that I saw in Katrina, I realized what a strong part the church plays in helping when the social infrastructure does not work as well as it's supposed to. So as I said to you, those are the guys, those are the boots on the ground right after the military and everybody else kind of leaves, and there's still the boots on the ground there. There are thousands and thousands of churches around America that are still sending people into Mississippi to help clean up a mess that took place nearly 10 years ago.
It's over 10.
And I believe it is over 10. And I believe very strongly that in terms of the homelessness problem, we have a program that came out of Denver that our mission. I'm off camera now, I know that.
That's okay.
But
it's obvious what you're doing.
the mission in Denver, and Brad Miley's organization up there was pretty responsible for it, is this starting a faith-based initiatives for homeless families, and they've done very well with this there. This is a program, it's called Denver's Road Home, and the mayor up in Denver is a guy who is just absolutely, as you can see, I've kind of read through this quite a bit. I didn't just kind of pull this book out. I've spent a lot of time going through, taking a look at the things that are in here. Denver really got behind this thing, which is really odd for the city to go and say, geez, we want the church partners to do this thing. But they did. And it's amazing what they've done here. Now, I've had this information for a couple of years, and I had a chance through a guy here who runs something called the City Club, George Mitrovich, to meet Mayor Hickenlooper, who's the mayor in Denver, who's the guy who said, we're going to do this. We're going to get the faith-based community to be involved. The guy that runs the City Club here in San Diego also runs something called the Denver Forum. It's a speaking group, so he ferries back and forth. So Hickenlooper, the mayor, was pretty solid here. I talked to our mayor a year ago and said, would you think this is a good thing for you to sign up for if we can get the churches mobilized? And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, the economy is just, the city's near bankruptcy here right now.
Almost every city in the land is.
And we've got a whole different issue with our pension problem. We've got people retiring out at $300 and $400 annual pension salaries that has bankrupted the city, and nobody wants to kind of fix that problem by saying we're not going to do this. So But I think that now that we've got people, now that your homeless numbers are increasing, and they are in most urban areas, especially those areas that have been impacted by house prices dropping because the economy's bad and having a high unemployment rate, that I really do believe that the faith-based initiative is what's going to change things in homeless. It's not local and city governments. They're all trying to figure out how to run and keep the same number of people employed on a less tax base. So the government's pulling back from a lot of these programs, even though the homeless program really got adversely affected when they started closing these mental hospitals in the Reagan era. This has been 20 years of pushing down on services for ill-represented populations. Homeless people don't have a representative. They don't have a government.
You don't show up at the ballot box, you don't have a representative.
Nobody's looking out for them. So I think I think the faith-based programs are the ones that's going to help improve this. Just one church at a time. Let's imagine each church in this community here took one family. There's 1,000 homeless families in San Diego, and they're not all on street corners. They're living at the mother's house or the brother's house. They get 2 nights here, 2 nights there, and then hit a motel. But what would happen if a church said, we're going to adopt a family or two? Not just put them in houses and feed them and put them on a welfare system, but get them back to work and show them how to put money in the bank, show them how to save money, show them how to prosper in an economy that's not very friendly to them. And we're going to make sure that this happens for these families that we're working with.